Howdy, folks. Gather round and let me tell you a tale about the biggest, strongest lumberjack the world has ever known, Paul Bunyan.
He's a legend, a myth, a giant among men, and his stories are taller than the tallest trees in the forest. Grandpop grew up in a coastal logging and fishing town. Paul Bunyan was a big deal there, and in all of the logging areas. In fact, they even had a yearly celebration featuring Paul Bunyan with a parade that Grandpop rode in as a kid. Yes, he was riding in a real logging truck in the parade that day. Nice memory.
Now picture this, a man so big, his footprints carved out the Great Lakes. Now, that's a big fella.
And just like every good lumberjack needs his trusty axe, Paul Bunyan had Babe, the blue ox.
Together, Paul Bunyan and I roamed the American frontier, leaving our mark on the land and in the hearts of those who heard our tales. Our adventures are the stuff of legend, filled with humor, exaggeration, and a whole lot of tall tales.
From the icy mountains of the north to the sunny plains of the south, Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox have captured the imaginations of generations.
These tales tell of hard work, perseverance, and the boundless possibilities that lay ahead for those brave enough to chase them. Paul Bunyan embodies the American spirit of ingenuity and determination, always finding a way to overcome any obstacle with a mix of strength, smarts, and a healthy dose of humor.
But where did this legend come from? Was Paul Bunyan a real person? And just how big was that blue ox anyway? Join us as we delve into the world of Paul Bunyan, separating fact from fiction and exploring the enduring legacy of this American folk hero.
Get ready to be amazed, amused, and maybe even learn a thing or two about the power of storytelling and the magic that happens when history meets imagination. Time for a shout out to some good friends. Vicky, Leslie, Shelley, Julie, Teresa, Mickey, Rhonda, Caitlin, Kara, Morgan, Leah, Valerie, Verna, Lori, Sam, Renee, Doris, Mary, Amy, Morgan, and Roseanne.
Now, pinpointing the exact moment Paul Bunyan stepped out of the woods and into legend is trickier than saddling a swarm of bees. See, his story, it didn't start with a bang, but a whisper, a tall tale shared around a flickering campfire, warming the spirits of lumberjacks after a hard day's work.
Imagine yourself back then, deep in the heart of the Northwoods. The air is thick with the scent of pine and wood smoke.
Life was tough, backbreaking work. Every day was a test of strength and grit.
That's how Paul Bunyan likely began. A larger-than-life figure, born from the imagination of lumberjacks, each adding their own embellishments, their own fantastical feats. He was their Hercules, their Beowulf, a symbol of their own strength and resilience in a harsh and unforgiving land.
These tales, whispered from camp to camp, eventually found their way out of the woods. Like a seed carried on the wind, the legend of Paul Bunyan spread. It landed in saloons and general stores, each retelling adding a new layer of myth and exaggeration.
But it wasn't until the early 20th century that Paul Bunyan truly stepped into the spotlight. Newspapers, hungry for engaging stories, started printing his exploits. Suddenly, this folk hero of the lumberjacks became a national sensation.
Companies saw the marketing potential of this larger-than-life figure. Paul Bunyan and Babe started popping up everywhere, selling everything from breakfast cereal to logging equipment. The more they were used to hawk products, the more famous they became.
So, you're probably wondering, under all those tall tales, is there a real Paul Bunyan?
Well, that's where things get as tangled as a fishing line after a day on the lake with Babe the Blue Ox. Some folks say Paul was inspired by a real French-Canadian lumberjack, a giant of a man known for his strength and fighting prowess.
Others point to lumber camp cooks and foremen, claiming they were the basis for Bunyan's larger-than-life persona.
He embodies the spirit of the American lumberjack, strong, resourceful, and always ready, with a tall tale and a hearty laugh. The true magic of Paul Bunyan lies not in whether he was real, but in the stories he inspired and the way they continue to capture our imaginations.
Now, folks have been scratching their heads for years, trying to find a real-life lumberjack who might have inspired the legend of Paul Bunyan. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack the size of Mount Everest. Tricky business.
One fella often mentioned is a French-Canadian logger named Fabien Saginaw Joe Fournier. Now, Joe was a mountain of a man, known for his incredible strength and his way with a cant hook. They say he could out-chop, out-lift, and out-drink any man in the Northwoods.
Some folks swear Joe was the real deal, the inspiration behind Paul Bunyan's incredible feats. But whether Joe was the true source or just another tall tale, well, that's a story for another campfire.
There's whispers, too, of a lumber camp cook named Joe Mufferin, a man known for his quick wit and even quicker temper.
While pinpointing a single source for Paul Bunyan's legend might be as futile as teaching a squirrel to water ski, bad example. There's no doubt historical events and trends fueled the fire. Photo credit Ashley Wadwani Smith, Williams Lake Tribune.
The mid-1800s saw a boom in logging across North America, particularly around the Great Lakes region. Thousands of men, drawn by the promise of adventure and good pay, flocked to these remote areas, working tirelessly to harvest the vast forests. Life was harsh, the work dangerous, and the days long.
It's no wonder these lumberjacks turned to storytelling for entertainment and camaraderie.
These tales passed from camp to camp, evolved over time, growing taller and more exaggerated with each retelling. Paul Bunyan, with his superhuman strength and his knack for outsmarting any challenge, perfectly embodied the spirit of these lumberjacks.
So was Paul Bunyan a real person? Well, the answer ain't as simple as a yes or no. Like a good stew, it's a mix of ingredients, each adding its own flavor to the pot.
But here's the thing about legends. Sometimes the story itself is more important than its origins. Paul Bunyan, whether real or imagined, represents the spirit of the North American lumberjack in the mainland USA, Alaska, Canada, and all the northern areas. The grit, determination, and humor it took to tame the wilderness. The stories were first shared by Scandinavian, German, and Irish immigrants to the Great Lakes region, and later by pretty well everyone. He reminds us that even the toughest challenges can be overcome with ingenuity, a bit of sweat, and a whole lot of heart. And that's a lesson worth remembering, whether you're trying to fell a giant redwood or just navigating the twists and turns of everyday life. Now, let's talk about the feats that made Paul Bunyan a legend. This fellow wasn't just strong, he was strong enough to make a grizzly bear look like a cuddly teddy bear. They say he could fell a whole forest with a single swing of his axe, and that ain't no fish tale.
One story tells of how Paul dug the Grand Canyon while dragging his axe behind him, just to make a shortcut for bait.
His strength wasn't just brute force, though. They say Paul was as skilled as he was strong. He could tie a knot that'd make a sailor blush, and could stack logs so high they'd brush the clouds. But whether he was digging rivers, chopping down forests, or just showing off his incredible skills, one thing's for sure: Paul Bunyan's feats of strength and skill became the stuff of legend. Now, Paul Bunyan wasn't just about chopping down trees. He shaped the very land we live on, or so the stories say. They say he carved out the Great Lakes with his giant shovel, creating fishing holes so big you need a telescope just to see across them.
And those twisty-turny rivers out west. Legend has it, Paul created those too, dragging his axe behind him while he walked, carving out valleys and canyons along the way.
But Paul wasn't just about moving mountains and rerouting rivers. He used his strength to help folks too. They paint a picture of a time when the American frontier was a wild and untamed place, and Paul Bunyan, with his boundless energy and can-do spirit, was the one who tamed it, one tall tale at a time. Now, Paul Bunyan wasn't just all brawn and no brains.
He was as sharp as his axe and twice as quick-witted. They say I could outsmart a fox in a game of checkers and could spin a yarn so tall, it'd make your hair stand on end.
One story tells of how Paul outsmarted a giant swarm of mosquitoes by inventing mosquito netting, though some say he just used one of Babe's old socks. Another tale describes how he escaped a forest fire by simply outrunning it, his giant strides carrying him to safety. Another had him stomping it out with his huge boots.
My quick thinking wasn't just for show, though. I used my wits to solve problems and help folks in need.
These tales of Paul Bunyan's wit and wisdom remind us that sometimes the best way to overcome a challenge ain't always with brute force, but with a clever mind and a good dose of common sense. Now every hero needs a sidekick, and Paul Bunyan, well, he had the biggest, bluest, most loyal partner a fella could ask for, Babe the Blue Ox.
Legend has it I was born during the winter of the blue snow, hence my unique hue. They say I was so big as a calf, Paul needed a team of horses just to pull me out of the mud.
Babe grew bigger every day, eventually dwarfing even the tallest trees in the forest. His horns were so wide, folks claimed a crow could fly a week without seeing from one tip to the other.
But I wasn't just a powerhouse. I was Paul's best friend and confidant. We understood each other like two peas in a pod, or maybe more like a giant lumberjack and his equally giant blue ox.
The stories tell of how Paul and Babe met when Paul was just a wee lad. Well, wee for a giant, that is. Seems Babe wandered into Paul's camp during a blizzard, seeking shelter and maybe a bite to eat.
I, being a kind soul even back then, took pity on the little fella and fed him a whole stack of pancakes.
From then on, Paul and Babe were inseparable. They worked side by side, tackled challenges together, and shared many a laugh around the campfire.
Our bond was unbreakable, a testament to the power of friendship, even between a giant lumberjack and his blue ox.
Their adventures together were legendary. It's time for another shout out to Amanda, Noah, Abe, Archer, Addie, Sharon, Ray, Linda, Dave, and of course Diane.
Now, you might be wondering what made me so darn special. Sure, I was big and strong, but there was more to me than that.
Babe represented something pure and good, a gentle giant with a heart as big as his appetite. He was loyal, always there for Paul, no matter what kind of mess they found themselves in.
I was hardworking, never complaining about the heavy loads or long journeys.
And most of all, he was kind, a gentle soul in a world that often valued strength above all else. In a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming, Babe reminds us that even the biggest challenges can be faced with a little bit of heart and a whole lot of friendship. Now you might be wondering how a fella like Paul Bunyan, a lumberjack born in the heart of the Northwoods, became a household name across the entire country. Well, it's a tale as twisty and turny as a log flume ride.
You see, as folks moved west, chasing dreams and opportunity, they carried their stories with them. Those lumberjacks who'd worked the Great Lakes, they fanned out across the land, finding work in new forests, new territories.
And wherever they went, those stories of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox went with them, around campfires, in saloons, even whispered from bunk to bunk in crowded bunkhouses. The legend spread like wildfire.
Newspapers caught wind of these tall tales, printing them for eager readers hungry for a bit of adventure and a good chuckle.
Pretty soon, Paul Bunyan wasn't just a lumberjack. He was a national sensation, his feats of strength and wit echoing from coast to coast.
Celebrating a tall tale towns that remember Paul. Now, some folks might think Paul Bunyan's just a figment of our imagination, a tall tale spun for entertainment, a larger-than-life character born from the need to explain the unexplainable. But there are towns across America that'll tell you different, towns that have woven Paul into the very fabric of their identity. They've embraced the legend of Paul Bunyan, celebrating his memory with festivals, statues, and a whole heap of good-natured fun. These celebrations bring communities together, young and old, to share in the joy of storytelling. Take Bemidji, Minnesota, for example. They claim to be Paul's birthplace, and they've got the statues to prove it. These statues are not just landmarks, they are symbols of local pride and heritage. Towering over the town square are Paul and Babe, larger than life and twice as colorful. Visitors from all over come to snap a photo and hear the tales.
Then there's Bangor, Maine, another town that lays claim to Paul's legacy. They've got their own impressive statue of the big fella, standing tall and proud. This statue is a testament to the town's rich history in the lumber industry. And every year they host the Paul Bunyan Lumberjack Show, a rootin' tootin' celebration of all things lumberjack, with log rolling, axe throwing, and enough tall tales to make your head spin. It's a time when the community comes alive with the spirit of adventure and camaraderie. From coast to coast, towns big and small pay tribute to Paul Bunyan, remembering him not just as a mythical lumberjack, but as a symbol of American ingenuity, hard work, and the power of a good story. These tales remind us of the strength and determination that built this country and the joy of a well-spun yarn.
More than just a myth, Bunyan's enduring legacy. Now you might be thinking, why is this Paul Bunyan fella still so popular after all these years? Well, it's more than just his size, though that certainly helps. Paul Bunyan represents something deeply rooted in the American spirit. He's a symbol of our frontier past, a time when the land was wild and untamed, and it took grit, determination, and a whole lot of elbow grease to make a living. He embodies the spirit of hard work, perseverance, and the belief that anything is possible if you set your mind to it.
But Paul's appeal goes beyond just history. His stories are full of humor, exaggeration, and a healthy dose of the absurd. They remind us not to take ourselves too seriously, to find joy in the face of adversity, and to never underestimate the power of a good laugh. In a world that can sometimes feel a bit too serious, Paul Bunyan's legacy is a breath of fresh air, a reminder that even the toughest challenges can be faced with a grin and a hearty, "Let's do this." One last shout out to all of our subscribers. We couldn't make these videos without you. You are the best and are very appreciated.
The echo of an axe swing, Bunyan's place in popular culture. Now, even if you've never stepped foot in a lumber camp or wrestled a grizzly bear for your breakfast, chances are you've crossed paths with Paul Bunyan in one form or another. His towering figure and legendary tales have seeped into the very essence of American folklore. That's because his legend, like a well-oiled double-bit axe, has carved its way deep into American popular culture. From books and comics to movies and television shows, his stories have been told and retold, captivating audiences of all ages. Paul and Babe have been entertaining folks for generations. Their adventures have been a source of inspiration and amusement. Remember those classic Disney cartoons? They brought Paul Bunyan's larger-than-life exploits to the screen, making him a household name. Or how about those larger-than-life statues greeting travelers on the open road? These iconic landmarks have become must-see attractions.
And let's not forget the countless souvenirs, from mugs and t-shirts to those little bottles of maple syrup and even beer. Well, you can guess. These items keep the legend alive in our daily lives. Paul Bunyan ain't just a legend. He's a brand, a symbol of Americana, as recognizable as apple pie and a 4th of July barbecue. His image evokes a sense of nostalgia and pride in American heritage. But it goes beyond just merchandise and media. His influence permeates various aspects of our culture. Paul Bunyan's influence can be found in our everyday language, too. Phrases like working like a lumberjack or Paul Bunyan-sized effort are part of our vernacular. Ever heard someone say they're working like a lumberjack or tackled a task that required a Paul Bunyan-sized effort? These expressions highlight the enduring impact of his legend. That's the power of a good story. It becomes woven into the fabric of our lives, its phrases and imagery as familiar as our own reflections. Paul Bunyan's legacy continues to shape our culture, reminding us of the strength and spirit of the American frontier.
Keeping the legend alive. Why Paul Bunyan still matters. Now, you might be wondering, why does a tall tale about a giant lumberjack still resonate with folks in this day and age? It's a fair question, especially when you consider how much the world has changed since the days when Paul Bunyan first swung his mighty axe. Well, I reckon it's because Paul Bunyan represents something timeless, something we all crave, even in our modern world. In a time where technology often keeps us indoors, the legend of Paul Bunyan calls us back to nature, to the great outdoors. He embodies the spirit of adventure, the thrill of the unknown, the idea that there are still frontiers to be explored, both within ourselves and in the world around us. His stories remind us that there's always more to discover, more to experience, and more to learn. He reminds us that hard work, determination, and a healthy dose of humor can overcome even the most daunting challenges. In a world that often feels overwhelming, Paul Bunyan's tales offer a sense of hope and resilience.
And perhaps most importantly, Paul Bunyan's story is a reminder of the power of storytelling itself. It's a testament to how stories can shape our lives, our values, and our sense of community. How a simple tale, passed from one person to another, can grow and evolve, taking on a life of its own, connecting generations through shared laughter, wonder, and a sense of shared history. These stories become a part of who we are, a thread in the fabric of our collective memory. So, the next time you see a towering tree or hear a tale that seems too good to be true, remember Paul Bunyan and his trusty blue ox, Babe. Think about the lessons his stories impart and the joy they bring. Tester, evaluator, and grandpop at WiseHooterLearning want you to remember that within each of us lies a spark of that same adventurous spirit, a capacity for greatness, and a whole lot of room for a good, hearty laugh. Embrace that spirit and let it guide you through life's many adventures.